The moon had not yet risen when Vera Lowen's name was cut from the pack song. Kael Moon Amphitheater held nearly every wolf in the kingdom, from silver-blooded nobles in the upper rings to border widows and scarred watchmen pressed into the lowest shadows. Thousands had gathered for the Renewal Anthem, the sacred song that sealed the mountain borders for another year. White banners hung from the stone arches. Bronze fire bowls burned with blue-edged flame. Above the northern platform, Alpha King Maddren Kael sat beneath the carved moon crown of his house, still as a blade left in winter. Vera stood alone below the central dais, with a strip of gray cloth bound around her wrists. Not iron, not chains. Chains would have made the court look cruel. Song-Keeper Ilyra Voss preferred cruelty dressed as law. Vera Lowen Ilyra announced, her voice carrying cleanly through the amphitheater. Former South Border attendant, former night runner, and accused corrupter of the third protection verse, you are summoned before the Renewal Anthem to surrender all claim to the disputed line. A murmur moved through the stone rings. Some looked at Vera with pity. More looked with relief. A kingdom could forgive hunger wounds and death, but it did not easily forgive a woman whose suffering had made its polished history uncomfortable. Vera lifted her chin. She wore no singer's white, no guard's black. Only a plain ash-gray cloak, the color given to servants, whose names were needed in labor records, but not in ceremony. Her hair had been braided without ornaments. Her throat was bare. Ilyra had made certain no one would mistake her for a woman of consequence. On the dais, Ilyra shone like a blade under frost. Her white wolf silk gown was stitched with silver notes. Tiny bells gleamed in her dark hair. In one hand, she held the moon archive knife, too delicate for battle, sharp enough to cut ink from parchment and memory from song. In the other, she held the revised pack song. Vera saw the empty place at once. A smooth gap in the vellum where her verse had been. Not crossed out, not marked. Removed, as if it had never existed. The court has judged, Ilyra continued, that the unauthorized verse sung at the south border 2 winters past weakened the blessing and endangered royal lands. By archive law, the false line will be cleansed before moonrise. Once the Renewal Anthem is completed, no future claim may be made in Vera Lowen's name. Vera's mouth went dry, but she did not lower her eyes. 2 winters past 12, patrol wolves had been dying in the border fever. The healers had failed. The old ward stones had cracked. Maddren Kael himself had lain half-conscious in a war tent, poison-black veins climbing his throat, his royal wolf shaking beside him with its great jaws clenched against pain. No court singer had come that night. Vera had. Not because she was noble. Not because anyone ordered her. Because the wolves were dying, and she still remembered the old border cadence her mother had sung over broken watchfires. She had pressed both hands to her ribs, where bond pain already burned like a hidden brand, and she had sung until blood filled her mouth. By dawn, the wolves had breathed again. By spring, Ilyra Voss had taken the verse. By summer, the court praised a polished version without Vera's name. By tonight, even that stolen praise had become dangerous. Ilyra did not want Vera forgotten by accident. She wanted her erased by law. Ilyra turned toward the royal platform and bowed. Alpha King Maddren, your seal approved the correction. The court asks only that you witness its completion. Every face turned upward. Maddren did not move. He was feared for that stillness. Broad-shouldered, black-haired battle, scarred with eyes like cold silver under storm clouds. His kingdom called him unshakable. His enemies called him moon-cursed. Vera remembered him differently. Fevered, bleeding, one hand gripping the edge of a cot while his wolf whimpered under canvas and snow. He looked at her now as if trying to place a sound from a dream. Then his gaze dropped to the vellum. Proceed, he said. One word. It landed harder than any accusation. Vera had known his seal was on the order. She had told herself kings signed too much trusted. Too many saw too little from thrones built too high above the ground. But his voice left no room for that mercy. He had chosen the clean ceremony. He had chosen the court's comfort. He had chosen silence because silence was easier to govern than truth. Ilyra smiled. Bring the witness salt. A guard stepped forward with a bronze basin filled with pale moon salt. Beside him, an old archive woman carried a bone needle threaded with silver hair. Vera stared at the needle. So, that was the true punishment. Not only erasure, voice binding. If the needle touched her tongue after the salt oath, any future attempt to speak the missing verse would strangle in her throat. Ilyra did not fear Vera's guilt. She feared Vera's memory. The old woman would not meet her eyes. Ilyra descended one step close enough that only Vera could hear the softness beneath her command. You were given a place in the dark. You should have stayed grateful. There it was. The real crime. Not corruption. Not danger. Not unstable magic. Ingratitude. Vera looked past Ilyra to the lower ring where border widows stood with their shawls pulled tight, and old scouts kept their hands folded to hide missing fingers. Their names were not in the pack song either. Their dead had warmed the border stones. Their sons had bled under winter moons. Their wives had carried water, stitched wounds, burned fever cloth, and buried wolves whose noble masters never learned their names. Vera had been erased, but she was not the first. She would not let herself be the cleanest. The archive woman lifted the bone needle. Vera Lowen, she said, voice trembling. Do you surrender the disputed verse? No. The word cut through the amphitheater. Ilyra's bells went still. The guard nearest Vera reached for her arm. Answer properly. Vera turned her head and looked at his hand. She had no weapon. No rank. No wolf standing at her heel. But she still owned the next breath, and she used it. I do not surrender the verse, she said. A stolen line cannot be purified by the thief. The lower rings fell into sharp silence. Ilyra's face hardened. You will not accuse the royal archive. I accuse no archive, Vera said. Archives do not fear old names. People do. For the first time, Ilyra's fingers tightened around the moon archive knife. A small thing. A beautiful thing. Fear had a sound when it tried to stay quiet. Above them, Maddren leaned forward. Vera saw him notice. Not her beauty. Not her pain. The detail. Ilyra's hand on the knife. The way the Song-Keeper stood between Vera and the vellum, as if the parchment itself needed guarding. Why is she bound? Maddren asked. The question passed through the court like a wolf moving under snow. Ilyra bowed again too quickly. Because pain magic was used in the false verse majesty. If she speaks during the anthem, the border blessing may fracture. Pain magic, Maddren repeated. A low growl rose from the royal platform, not from any noble. From Maddren's wolf. The massive silver-black beast lay in the shadow of the royal arch, larger than any wolf in the amphitheater, its fur dark as storm pine, and streaked with moon silver along the mane. For months, rumor had said the royal wolf was weakening. Tonight, the court could see it in the way the creature held its body close to the stone, as if standing would cost too much. Yet its eyes were open now, fixed on Vera. The old wound under her ribs pulsed once. She hid the pain, but Maddren's gaze sharpened, as if something in him had heard what no one else could. Ilyra spoke before he could. Moonrise nears. If the renewal anthem fails, the eastern packs will call Kael blood unfit to guard the border. The revised song must be completed. There it was. The leash around the king's throat. Politics. Vera understood then how Ilyra had won. She had not needed Maddren to hate Vera, only to fear disorder more than injustice. So Vera did something no one expected. She knelt. A soft ripple of satisfaction moved through the upper rings, but Vera did not kneel to Ilyra. She lowered herself before the first amphitheater step where frost had gathered over old carvings half-worn by generations of feet. With her bound hands, she rubbed the stone until a line emerged beneath the salt. A song is not true because it is clean. A song is true because it remembers the cost. Ilyra went pale. Maddren saw that too. Good. Let truth begin with stone. This is witness ground, Vera said. Older than the archive. Older than your knife. If my verse is false, sing over me and let the moon take my voice. If it is true, the pack song will refuse the lie. Dead stone does not judge royal memory, Ilyra snapped. No, Vera said, rising. Living wolves do. The royal wolf pushed itself to its feet. Gasps broke across the amphitheater, but the beast did not look at the court. It stepped out from the royal shadow, one huge paw at a time. And the stone beneath it trembled as if remembering a sound buried too deep. Maddren stood with it. Begin the anthem, Ilyra ordered, forcing command into her voice. The singers obeyed. The The first notes rose pure and bright, spilling through Kael Moon Amphitheater like silver water. The court joined in, thousands of voices braided into the ancient melody. Victories, coronations, winter hunts, dead kings, moon vows, the pack song carried them all upward. Vera stood below them and listened. She heard the beauty. She also heard the wound. The revised anthem gleamed, but beneath it waited a hollow place where breath should have been. Ilyra had removed the pain and expected the blessing to live on polish. She had cut out the cost and called the song pure. The singers reached the missing verse. Every throat opened. No sound came. The silence was absolute. Ilyra slashed the moon archive knife through the air. Again, the singers tried. Their mouths shaped Ilyra's replacement line. The amphitheater swallowed it whole. The blue flames bent inward. Wolves in every ring lifted their heads, ears, pinned eyes shining with alarm. The vellum in Ilyra's hand began to curl at the erased place. Maddren looked from the failed singers to Vera. For the first time, horror entered his face. Not at her. At what he had allowed. Ilyra pointed the knife toward Vera. She is choking the anthem. Find her voice now. The guard moved. Maddren's command struck faster. The next hand that touches her throat answers to me. The guard froze. Vera did not look at Maddren. She could not afford gratitude yet. A king's protection meant little if it arrived only after his seal had sharpened the blade. The royal wolf descended. No one stopped it. The great silver-black beast moved down the steps with painful, deliberate grace past nobles, who shrank back past singers, who lost the color from their faces past Ilyra, whose polished mask cracked for one breath when the wolf did not bow to her song. It stopped before Vera, close enough that its breath stirred the loose hair at her temple. Then it lowered its head and pressed its muzzle to her bound wrists. The gray cloth snapped apart. The pieces fell to the moonlit stone. A sound rose from the court, but the wolf lifted its head before fear could become speech. Its eyes met Vera's. In them she saw the fever tent, the border snow, the dying breath, the plea no human mouth had spoken. Then Maddren's royal wolf howled. The sound was not words, yet every wolf understood it. Silver light unfurled from the howl and climbed into the air above the amphitheater. Notes became marks. Marks became names. The erased place in the pack song opened like a wound finally allowed to bleed. Vera Lowen burned across the moonlight. Ilyra staggered back. Maddren went still. Because beneath Vera's name came another sound hidden inside the verse, lower, broken, desperate. The voice of his own wolf on the fever night, begging for Vera before the Alpha King had ever remembered her name. A silver silence held Kael Moon Amphitheater after the royal wolf stopped howling. No one clapped. No one prayed. No one dared repeat the name burning in the air. Vera Lowen. The letters hung above the central stone like a wound the moon itself refused to close. The royal singers stood frozen with their mouths half open, their polished anthem broken in their throats. The nobles in the upper rings stared downward, as if the ash-gray servant below them had become dangerous by being named. Vera did not move. Her wrists were bare now. The torn binding cloth lay at her feet. The royal wolf stood before her, massive and silver-black, its breath steaming in the cold. Its eyes fixed on her with a grief too old for any beast that had merely remembered a song. Behind it, Alpha King Maddren Kael stared at the moonlit name, then at Vera. The horror in his face did not soften her. Not yet. Horror was what powerful men felt when truth finally reached them. It was not the same as justice. Song-Keeper Ilyra Voss recovered first. The anthem has been struck by hostile painecraft, she said sharply. Her white bells shook once in her dark hair. No one repeat what the false light displayed. No one answer the wolf. Royal singers, hold your lines. The singers did not obey. They could not. Their voices had failed at the missing place, and every wolf in the amphitheater knew it. Maddren's gaze moved slowly to Ilyra. False light. Ilyra bowed too quickly to seem calm. Pain can mimic witness law when bound to royal blood. That is why the accused had to be voice-bound before the anthem. She attached her suffering to your wolf, Majesty. Vera almost laughed. Instead, she placed one hand over the crescent ache beneath her ribs and drew one steady breath through it. My suffering was attached to your wolf the night he was dying, she said. The court stirred. Maddren's eyes sharpened. Not with anger. Recognition. That was worse in its own way. Vera saw the moment memory struck him, snow against canvas, poison in his veins, a woman's voice dragging him back from the dark while his wolf begged beside him. His face did not fully change, but his stillness broke at the edges. Vera, he said low. She looked at him. Do not say my name, as if remembering it now repairs where you signed it away. The words crossed the amphitheater with clean force. A noblewoman gasped at the insult. A council lord shifted as if expecting Maddren to strike her down. But the Alpha King did not move against Vera. He only took the blow because it had found its rightful place. Ilyra stepped between them. Majesty, this is manipulation. She wants you to confuse fever memory with law. Then bring the original border record, Maddren said. The Song-Keeper's fingers tightened around the Moon archive knife. The original was sealed after correction. Unseal it. We are inside the renewal hour. Opening corrected records during active anthem could fracture the blessing. The blessing is already fractured. A murmur rose. Ilyra heard it and turned her authority toward the crowd before it could escape her. The court will not be ruled by panic. The revised anthem can still be completed. We will pass around the corrupted section. Vera stepped forward. Only one step. The royal wolf moved with her. The upper rings recoiled. Ilyra's eyes flashed, not because Vera had power, but because the wolf's obedience gave the court permission to wonder why. You cannot pass around a missing wound, Vera said. Ilyra's mouth hardened. You are not a songkeeper. No, Vera answered. I was only there when the border wolves were choking on their own blood, and the official singers did not come. The lower rings changed first. A scarred watchman lifted his head. An old widow pressed both hands over her shawl. Tavanmar, one of the young scouts whose wolf had survived the fever winter, stepped half out from behind his captain before fear pulled him back. Vera saw them, the useful and unnamed. The hands that carried water-burned fever-cloth-warmed stones held dying wolves through convulsions, and were later told the official song had saved the border. Her verse had been cut from the anthem, but it had not carried only her pain. It had carried all of them. That was why Ilyra feared it. A single erased woman could be dismissed. A ring full of erased witnesses could become history. Ilyra raised the Moon archive knife. Enough. The accused will be silenced before she spreads further corruption. 2 guards came down from the dais. One carried the bronze basin of moon salt. The other held the bone needle threaded with silver hair. Vera's body remembered the threat before her mind named it. Voice binding. The needle would not only stop her from singing, it would make her own throat betray her if she tried to speak the missing verse again. Maddren moved. His voice cut through the air before the guards reached her. The next hand raised to bind her voice answers to me. Both guards stopped. Vera did not thank him. She could not. Protection that arrived after erasure still had blood on its hands. But she noticed the shape of his command. He had not claimed her. He had not ordered her to be silent for her own safety. He had stopped the hand reaching for her throat. That mattered. Not enough. But it mattered. Ilyra turned fury hidden beneath ceremony. Majesty, if she is allowed to sing, she may damage the entire border blessing. Then let the song judge her. The song has already been compromised. Vera looked up at the glowing letters of her name. The light flickered, thinning at the edges. The missing pack verse was not fully awake yet. It had answered the royal wolf because the wolf remembered. But if Ilyra forced the anthem forward, if the polished singers buried the hollow place again, the witness might fade before the erased could speak. So Vera chose before fear could choose for her. She knelt. A ripple of satisfaction moved through the noble rings, but Vera ignored it. She did not kneel to Ilyra. She pressed her bare palm against the lowest amphitheater step where frost had gathered over worn carvings older than the royal archive. Her mother's voice returned to her not as a ghost but as memory. A true song does not ask who is noble. It asks who paid. Vera sang one note. It was not beautiful. It came from the place beneath her ribs where the old crescent scar burned with every breath. It scraped out of her like something pulled from a sealed wound. The note struck the stone and vanished. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the floor beneath the lower rings lit silver. Mira of the South Watch. Old Wren Fire Carrier. Salin Widow of the Third Patrol. Taven Mar voice returned. Names spread through the stone like moonlit roots. The lower rings gasped. A widow fell to her knees when her dead husband's name appeared beneath her feet. A one-handed fire carrier covered his mouth as his own name glowed beside the place where he had been standing in silence. Taven stared at the silver words near his boots, trembling, as if the stone had given him back a breath he had never been allowed to claim. The pack song was not praising them. It was remembering them. Ilyra's face went white. Vera rose slowly, though the old scar pulled at her ribs. The verse was never mine alone. That is why cutting my name did not make your anthem whole. The royal wolf bowed its head. Not to Vera's rank. To the witness. Maddren watched the names spread, and something in him shifted so visibly the court could feel it. He looked no longer like a king deciding whether to believe a servant. He looked like a man standing inside the wreckage of what his seal had permitted. Ilyra struck the stone with the moon archive knife. The sound cracked through the amphitheater. Several silver names guttered. The widow cried out. The royal wolf snarled, and Maddren's hand went to the blade at his belt, but Vera lifted one hand before violence could take the moment from truth. No, she said. Maddren stopped. Vera turned toward Ilyra. Show them the knife. Ilyra's expression hardened. You command nothing here. If the verse is false, your blade should be clean. The court's attention moved to the moon archive knife. Ilyra did not turn it. That refusal became louder than any confession. Maddren's voice dropped. Turn the blade. For the first time that night, Ilyra looked afraid of him. Slowly she lifted the knife and turned its underside toward the moon. Black ink crawled along the silver edge. Not blood. Not shadow. Stolen song. Broken notes twisted across the blade, crushed so tightly they seemed to be fighting for air. Names appeared and vanished before the court could read them. Servants, scouts, widows, border keepers, dozens of them cut from the witness line before they could reach the royal record. Vera stared. One name burned longer than the rest. Not hers. Lowen Lena. Her mother's name. One. Lowen Lena. The air left Vera's lungs. Ilyra saw that she had seen, and for the first time her polished smile returned. Careful, Vera, the Song-Keeper whispered. Your verse was not the first one we buried. The old fire bowls around the amphitheater burned lower, though no wind touched them. Blue flames shrank inside bronze rims. Moonlight spread wider over the central stone, cold and merciless, catching the underside of the moon archive knife, where one name still crawled through black ink. Lowen Lena. Vera could not take her eyes from it. Her mother's name had not been spoken in Kael ceremony for 13 years. In border huts it survived only in lowered voices, in the way old women hummed while wrapping fever cloth, in the way scouts touched 2 fingers to their throats before crossing the South Ridge. The Royal Archive had written Lena Lowen as a failed attendant who died during winter sickness. But the knife remembered her as something else. Something buried. Maddren saw the change in Vera's face. Who was Lena Lowen? Ilyra answered before Vera could. A border woman with old superstitions, and a daughter taught to confuse grief with law. The royal wolf snarled. This time Maddren did not silence it. Vera lifted her gaze from the blade to Ilyra. My mother was a cadence keeper. A ripple moved through the lower rings. The older border people knew the title. The nobles did not. Their confusion pleased Ilyra. Confusion gave her room to turn truth into peasant noise. She was no appointed keeper, Ilyra said. The archive recognizes only sanctioned song-keepers. The border recognized those who could keep wolves breathing when sanctioned singers were too afraid to come. The words landed in the lower rings like a match to dry grass. A scarred watchman touched the glowing name near his boots. A widow straightened. Taven Mar looked as if he had been waiting years for someone to say aloud what every survivor knew. Maddren's eyes moved over them. Not as crowd. As witnesses. Explain the title, he said. Ilyra stiffened. Majesty, this is not the time for border folklore. It became the time when your knife named her. A small silence followed. Vera felt the pull beneath her ribs again, the crescent scar answering the unfinished pack song. The missing verse wanted sound, not performance, not beauty. Witness. If she let Ilyra speak first, the truth would be dressed in contempt before it ever reached the court. So Vera spoke. A cadence keeper remembers the cost inside protection songs, she said. Not the victories, not the crowns. The cost. Who bled, who fed the fires, who held the dying through the night. Without that memory, the pack song becomes praise without payment. Maddren's jaw tightened. Ilyra laughed softly. A charming border belief, but royal blessings are built on law, not grief. Vera looked at the glowing names in the floor. Then why did law fail where grief answered? The question struck the singers hardest. Several lowered their eyes. Ilyra saw the court tilting and moved at once. She raised the moon archive knife above the names still shining at the lower steps. Under sealed anthem authority, I declare all unsanctioned witness spread unlawful. Any name drawn by Painecraft may be cut before it contaminates royal memory. The knife flashed downward. Maddren crossed the space in one violent step and caught Ilyra's wrist before the blade touched stone. The amphitheater stopped breathing. His grip did not bruise. It did not need to. The next cut you make, he said, will be made through my command. Ilyra's face paled, but her voice remained smooth. Majesty, if the witness spread reaches the upper rings, old accusations may attach themselves to living houses. Alliances will fracture before dawn. There it is, Vera said quietly. Maddren looked at her. Vera did not look away from Ilyra. Not fear of falsehood, fear of who might be named. The royal wolf stepped beside Vera, massive shoulder nearly level with her chest. It did not touch her. It stood as a wall of fur and moonlit breath between her and the guards who still clutched the voice-binding needle. Maddren released Ilyra's wrist only after taking the knife from her hand. A gasp passed through the noble tears. No Song-Keeper was stripped of the moon archive knife during renewal. It was not done. That was why it mattered. Ilyra's mask cracked at the edges. You cannot complete the anthem without me. No, Maddren said. I cannot complete your version without you. Vera heard the difference. So did Ilyra. Maddren turned the blade under the moon. How do we open what was buried? Ilyra went still. Vera's scar answered before her mind, did burning hot enough that she pressed one hand to her side. The lower ring names brightened in response. Somewhere beneath the singer's dais stone gave a dull, hollow thud. Vera understood. Not fully. Enough. The knife does not open buried verse, she said. It only shows where the cut was made. Maddren's gaze sharpened. What opens it? Vera looked at the first amphitheater step, at the old line carved beneath frost. A song is true because it remembers the cost. My mother's cadence, she said. But I only know the beginning. Ilyra's smile returned thin and cruel. Then the night ends here. Not triumph, relief, a fear tell wrapped in contempt. Vera saw it and followed the shape of that relief. Ilyra did not fear Vera's beginning. She feared the ending. That meant the ending still existed somewhere. The rest was written down, Vera said. The Song-Keeper's eyes flickered. Maddren caught it. Where Ilyra said nothing, the royal wolf lowered its head and sniffed the moon archive knife. Its lips curled back. Then it turned away from the blade and faced the singer's dais. A low growl rolled from its chest. Vera followed its gaze to the semicircle of white-robed singers. Behind them, the central platform curved around a carved moon emblem. She had stood in this amphitheater before as a child, holding her mother's basket, watching Vera Lowen wait at the edge of ceremony with other border women, no one allowed into the official song. There had been a stair there once. Not visible. Not open. A service stair beneath the dais where old song leaves were stored, before the royal archive claimed them. Vera stepped toward it. Ilyra snapped. Do not let her near the dais. A guard moved. Maddren's voice came colder than the moon. Stand down. The guard stopped. Vera did not thank him. Her eyes remained on the carved moon emblem. If Maddren had helped now, he had also made tonight necessary. Both truths could stand together. She reached the dais and placed her palm against the stone. Nothing happened. Ilyra exhaled softly. Vera closed her eyes. Not to pray. To remember. Her mother's hands had smelled of smoke and bitter herbs. Her voice had always lowered at the final line of the old cadence. as if the ending was not meant for children. Vera had caught only fragments, names beneath names, breath beneath oath, a warning about polished songs starving the dead. She sang the beginning again. One rough note, then another. The amphitheater listened. The stone under her palm warmed. A seam of silver appeared around the carved moon. Ilyra lunged. Not at Vera. At Tavan Mar. The young scout stood closest to the lower witness line. Ilyra snatched the bone needle from the old archive woman and drove it toward his throat. One living witness bound, and the spread collapses. Vera turned too late. Maddren did not. He threw the moon archive knife. It spun once through the moonlight and struck the stone between Ilyra's hand and Tavan's neck. The impact burst silver sparks across the lower ring. Ilyra recoiled and Tavan fell back shaking but unbound. The court erupted. Maddren's voice cut through it. Touch another witness, and I will strip your archive name before the moon. Ilyra looked at him then, with hatred no ceremony could polish. Vera pressed both hands to the carved moon emblem. Sing, she called to the lower rings. Not beautifully. Truthfully. The widow began first. Then the one-handed fire carrier. Then Tavan voice breaking. Their rough cadence climbed through the amphitheater uneven but alive. Vera joined them, pulling the notes through the scar beneath her ribs. Pain blurred her sight, but she did not stop. The stone opened under her palms with a deep grinding sound. A hidden stair revealed itself beneath the singer's dais. Cold air breathed up from below. In that darkness, a black iron music cage hung from silver chains, holding a folded parchment that pulsed like a trapped heart. Vera knew before she saw the name. Her mother's final verse. Ilyra's face emptied of color. Then the cage began to burn blue from within. Blue fire bloomed inside the black iron music cage. It did not burn like ordinary flame. It made no crackle, gave no heat, and fed on no wood. It licked the folded parchment from the inside outward, tracing the sealed edges with pale hunger, while the silver chains above it trembled like strings pulled by unseen hands. Vera stood at the mouth of the hidden stair and felt the fire in her ribs. Not on her skin. Inside the old crescent scar. The lower ring cadence faltered behind her. A widow lost the note. Tavan Mar whispered her name. Even Maddren's royal wolf gave a low-pained sound as if the cage had teeth sunk into something deeper than paper. Ilyra Voss stepped back from the open stair, her face white but her eyes bright with desperate triumph. Buried verses cannot be touched, once archive fire wakes. If she reaches for it, the flame will take the false claimant first. Vera did not look away from the cage. Then why are you afraid? The words were quiet. They reached every stone. Ilyra's fingers curled around the torn edge of her sleeve, where the moon archive knife had been taken from her. For one breath, she looked not like a song-keeper, but like a woman watching a locked room open from the wrong side. Maddren descended the first hidden step. Vera put out her hand without looking at him. He stopped. The gesture was small, but the amphitheater saw it. A border woman, ash-cloaked and bleeding old pain into song, holding an alpha king back from the truth he had failed to guard. This is not yours to retrieve for me, she said. Maddren's jaw tightened, not in anger, in acceptance that cost him more than command would have. I will not take it from you, he said. No, Vera answered. You already let someone do that once. The words struck him full. Behind him, a few nobles stirred in offense. Maddren did not defend himself. He only lowered his head once, barely the smallest public admission a king could give. Without using language, the court could polish into politics. Then he turned to the guards. No one enters that stair unless she asks it. Ilyra's laugh cut thinly through the moonlit air. And if she dies in archive fire, Majesty, will you make a martyr of a border liar because your wolf whimpered at old pain? The royal wolf snarled. Maddren's eyes turned cold. Speak of my wolf again, as a tool of your argument, and you will answer to him, instead of me. Ilyra went silent. Vera stepped down. The hidden stair was narrow, cut for servants, and old keepers, not kings. Frost silvered the walls, though the air smelled of smoke and old vellum. With every step, the burning cage swung harder. The folded parchment inside pulsed like a heart refusing death. On the stone above the lower ring, witnesses kept humming. Their rough cadence followed Vera downward, not strong enough to open the cage but strong enough to keep the fire from swallowing it whole. Halfway down, a second line of old carving appeared along the stair wall. Buried song opens only to the cost that made it. Vera touched the words. Her mother had known. Lena Lowen had not hidden the final verse where nobles would seek it. She had placed it where only the one who still carried the wound could find it. Not bloodline pride. Not secret royalty. Not a crown-shaped destiny. Cost. Vera closed her fingers against the stone until the ache steadied her. Above, Ilyra called down, voice sharpening. Read the rest, Vera. Tell them what your mother truly left you. Tell them why no sanctioned songkeeper allowed her cadence into royal law. The bait was obvious. Still, it carried fear. Vera reached the bottom of the stair. The chamber beneath the dais was small and round, lined with broken shelves. Empty parchment racks stood like ribs. Hundreds of hooks covered the walls, but most held only ash curls and severed silver threads. This had not been storage. It had been a grave for songs. The music cage hung in the center. Inside it, the folded parchment burned blue. Maddren remained at the stairmouth above, exactly where she had stopped him. His shadow fell across the steps broad, and still a barrier between Vera and the court without trespassing into her choice. His wolf stood beside the opening head, low eyes burning with restrained fury. Vera lifted both hands toward the cage. The fire bent toward her. The pain struck so hard she nearly folded. Not flame pain. Memory pain. The fever tent surged around her snow-beating canvas. Wolves choking in rows. His royal wolf trembled beside him, too weak to rise, its silver-black muzzle pressed to frozen earth. And Vera, younger, terrified, kneeling in the corner, while her mother held her face between smoke-scarred hands. Not for him alone, Lena had said. Never for one king alone. If you sing, you carry all who paid. Then the memory shifted. Lena standing before Ilyra, blocking the correction order. Ilyra holding Maddren's seal ring while the king lay unconscious. The songkeeper's younger face hard with panic. If his court learns a Lowen cadence saved the royal wolf, Ilyra had hissed, every border witness will demand place in the anthem. Lena's answer had been quiet. Then give them place. Ilyra struck her. The memory broke before Vera could see more. She came back to the chamber with tears cold on her face, and one hand wrapped around the music cage bars. Above, Maddren had gone still as death. He had seen some of it, not all. Enough. Vera, he said, voice rough. She did not look up. If I open this, she said, the pack song will not return to what it was. It will name the ones your court buried. Then, let it name them. The answer came without delay. It reached her, but she did not let it become enough. One right answer did not undo years of wrong silence. Vera turned toward the amphitheater above. Not by your permission alone. The court heard her. She raised her voice, and though pain scraped each word, it carried through the hidden stair and into the moonlit rings. If this verse opens, every erased servant, widow, fire carrier, scout, and border keeper named by the song must be restored to record before the anthem is completed. Not thanked. Restored. The lower rings went utterly still. Maddren's eyes held hers from above. Then he turned to the court. The crown hears the condition. Ilyra stepped forward. You cannot bargain royal memory with a woman standing inside illegal songwork. Maddren did not look away from Vera. The crown accepts. The amphitheater trembled. The music cage unlocked. Not fully. One black bar split open, and the blue fire surged through the gap toward Vera's hands. She did not pull back. She sang the beginning her mother had taught her, not beautifully. Not like Ilyra's trained court voices, but with the rough truth of smoke fever and border snow. The lower rings joined. Their cadence filled the chamber, and the cage bars opened one by one. The parchment unfolded. Words rose from it in silver light. Lena Lowen, cadence keeper. Final witness of the South Fever night. Then the next line burned brighter. The royal wolf lived because Vera Lowen carried his death pain into song. The court gasped above. Maddren's wolf gave a broken sound. Vera's voice nearly failed, but she forced herself to read the final line as it formed. If her name is cut, the king's wolf will remember hunger, not oath. The blue fire vanished. The parchment dropped into Vera's hands, whole and cold. For one breath, The amphitheater seemed saved. Then Ilyra smiled. From beneath her white sleeve she drew a second strip of vellum marked with Maddren's black silver seal. Then hear the first correction order, she said. The one your king signed after waking. She lifted it to the moon, and the words burned open for all to see. Vera Lowen is to be removed before the king remembers her voice. The vellum in Ilyra's hand glowed brighter than the moon. Vera Lowen is to be removed before the king remembers her voice. The words burned in black silver script above the central dais, cruel in their clarity. No whisper could soften them. No courtier could pretend not to see. Maddren's seal flared beneath the line. The crowned wolf of House Kael pressed deep into the old order. The amphitheater turned toward him. Vera did not. She looked only at the order. There was a strange mercy in seeing the blade instead of feeling for years where it had entered. She had wondered in weaker hours whether Maddren had never known, whether Ilyra had hidden everything, whether the king she had sung back from death had slept through the erasure that followed. Now the moon had answered. He had woken. He had signed. Maddren's face did not change quickly. It emptied first, as if something inside him had stepped backward from the world. Then pain entered, not the clean pain of a man falsely accused, but the darker kind that came when memory found its own hand on the wound. Ilyra saw it and struck. The crown recognized the danger. She called to the rings. The king himself ordered removal before fever attachment could corrupt royal judgment. Vera Lowen's voice was judged a threat to sovereign will. Several nobles seized the explanation like drowning men grabbing wood. A council lord rose from the second tier. If the king signed it, the matter is crown law. Crown law does not need to be pleasant, another said. Only binding. The lower rings recoiled. The glowing witness names flickered beneath their feet, weakened by the court's sudden hunger for permission to forget again. Vera felt the parchment in her hand grow cold. Her mother's final verse. She could use it to defend herself. She could cry betrayal. She could point at Ilyra, at the order, at the king. Every instinct in the amphitheater expected the erased woman to beg now that the seal had turned against her. Instead, she climbed the hidden stair back to the central stone. Slowly, with the parchment held flat against her chest. The royal wolf moved to meet her, but Vera lifted her hand. It stopped trembling, as if even the beast understood that this part of the wound could not be guarded by teeth. Maddren stood between throne and dais, the black silver order burning above him. Vera faced him at last. Read it, she said. The court went still. Maddren's eyes met hers. Ilyra's smile faltered. Vera, he began. No, she said. Not my name. The order. A muscle tightened in his jaw. Vera's voice did not rise. Do not let the court call this confusion. Do not let her call it necessary. Do not let your seal speak louder than your mouth. Read what you gave her. The command of it stunned the noble rings more than any magic had. An ash-cloaked border woman ordering the Alpha King to account for his own seal beneath the full moon. Maddren could have refused. A king's pride offered him 100 exits. He took none. He turned to the burning vellum and read aloud each word cut from him. Vera Lowen is to be removed before the king remembers her voice. The amphitheater shuddered. The royal wolf flinched as if struck. The crescent scar beneath Vera's ribs answered with a sharp burn, and the parchment in her hands pulsed once. Maddren kept reading as more lines appeared. All witness claims connected to the South Fever Night are to be held from royal hearing until after the Renewal Anthem is corrected. Border names attached to unauthorized cadence are to be classified as unstable, unsanctioned, and politically harmful. His voice grew rougher, but he did not stop. Song-Keeper authority is granted to Ilyra Voss for immediate correction. A sound moved through the lower rings. Not surprise. Betrayal. Ilyra raised her chin. The king was lucid. The seal was lawful. I accepted the burden others were too sentimental to bear. Vera looked at Maddren. Were you lucid? The question was not soft. His answer came after a silence long enough to condemn him. Enough to sign. The court shifted uneasily. Vera felt the blow land somewhere deeper than anger. He had not blamed poison, not forged seal, not council pressure. That honesty did not absolve him. It only made the wound real enough to stand on. Why, she asked. Maddren looked at the lower rings, at the witness names, at the royal wolf. who had begun to shake again beneath the unfinished song. Then he answered the amphitheater. Because I was told the Eastern Pax would call my reign fever-bound if the court learned a border cadence had saved my wolf. I was told the anthem needed one clean version before renewal. I was told one unnamed singer could be honored later privately after the kingdom was secure. His gaze returned to Vera. I chose secure. No one spoke. Vera's eyes burned, but she would not let tears become the center of this. No. You chose clean. The words struck him harder than accusation. Ilyra snapped. He chose the kingdom. Vera turned on her. He chose the story you gave him, because it cost him nothing that night. The lower rings breathed with her. Maddren bowed his head once. Not to the court. To the truth. Ilyra's control began to fray. This display changes nothing. By the king's own admission, the order was lawful. The witness spread is politically harmful. The renewal anthem must be completed with the corrected version, or every rival pack will claim Kael rule rests on a servant's wound. Not a servant's wound, Vera said. She lifted her mother's parchment, a record of payment. The parchment unfolded in her hands without wind. Silver notes rose from it, circling her fingers. The missing pack verse did not sing yet. It waited. Maddren saw the waiting. What does it require, Vera already knew. She had known from the moment the order opened. Her mother's law had never been made to flatter kings. It had been made to make protection costly enough that rulers would hesitate before erasing those who paid. The verse cannot restore what the crown cut, Vera said, until the crown names the cut. Ilyra's eyes widened. There. That was the fear. Maddren understood too. His face hardened, not in resistance, but in acceptance of the blade turning toward him. Vera held out the parchment. You must sing the correction as confession, she said. Not as king. As the one who signed it. A wave of shock rolled through the amphitheater. A king did not sing confession before envoys. A king did not place his own failure inside the pack song. Royal mistakes were revised into necessity. Necessity into victory. Victory into anthem. Maddren looked at the Eastern Pax in their high ring. Then at his own nobles. Then at Vera. If I do this, he said, the court will remember my shame. Vera's answer was immediate. Good. The word should have sounded cruel. It did not. It sounded fair. Maddren stepped toward the center stone. Ilyra moved fast. She snatched a fallen shard of silver thread from the broken voice-binding needle and swept it across the air. Royal singers strike the crown shield note. Several singers flinched. Now she commanded. The note rose thin and sharp from the front row. It wrapped around Maddren's throat like light. The royal wolf roared. Maddren staggered, one hand going to his neck. The crown shield note was old palace magic, made to prevent sovereign confession under enemy force. Ilyra had turned royal protection into a gag. Vera ran to him. Not because he deserved rescue. Because the truth did. The royal wolf lunged, but the note tightened before it could reach the singers. Maddren dropped to one knee, unable to speak, silver light cutting into his throat. Ilyra lifted her voice over the panic. Witness the danger. The border woman compels the king to self-condemn. The crown shield has judged her influence hostile. The noble rings erupted. Vera knelt before Maddren, close enough to see the pain in his eyes, close enough to hate him and save him in the same breath. He tried to speak. No sound came. Vera placed her mother's parchment between them on the stone. Then she did what no one in the court expected. She put Maddren's hand on the order he had signed. Not on her. On the proof. Do not borrow my voice, she said. Find yours. His fingers closed over the burning seal. The royal wolf lowered its head beside them and pressed its muzzle to Maddren's shoulder. Vera placed her own palm on the parchment's edge, not giving him her pain, only holding the record open. The missing pack verse answered. A low note rose from the stone beneath their hands. It did not break the crown shield. It pulled memory through it. Maddren's eyes went silver. The amphitheater vanished into a vision of the fever tent. He saw himself waking to Ilyra's voice, weak with poison, his wolf barely breathing. He saw the correction order placed before him. He heard Ilyra whisper that the border girl's cadence had bound his beast, that the eastern Pax would call him ruled by a servant's song, that the kingdom needed silence before it could afford gratitude. Then he saw what he had not seen before. Behind the tent flap, Vera stood in the snow, barefoot, blood at her mouth, one hand pressed to her ribs, listening as he signed away her name. Maddren came back with a sound like a wounded animal. The crown shield shattered. He rose to his feet, and when he spoke, his voice carried into every ring. I signed it. The court froze. I signed her erasure to keep my throne clean. I let fear call itself order. I let Song-Keeper Ilyra Voss remove a witness before I remembered the woman who saved my wolf. The royal wolf howled, once fierce and broken. The witness names reignited under the lower rings. Ilyra stumbled back, but the moonlight above her head darkened. The black-silver order twisted in the air. A final hidden line appeared beneath Maddren's confession. If the king remembers and still refuses restoration, his wolf shall forget him first. The royal wolf turned, slowly, away from Maddren, toward Vera. The royal wolf turned away from Maddren. No blade could have cut the amphitheater more deeply. The beast did not snarl at its king. It did not attack. That would have been easier for the court to understand. It simply shifted its great silver-black body until its shoulder no longer faced Maddren's hand, and its moon-bright eyes settled on Vera Lowen instead. A sound moved through the rings, low and frightened. For a Kael king, the royal wolf was not companion, symbol, or battle beast. It was the living oath of the crown. If the wolf rejected the blood it had guarded since, boyhood rival packs would not call it grief. They would call it divine judgment. Maddren stood very still. Vera saw the pain strike him before the court did. Not pride pain, not embarrassment. Something older and more naked. A man feeling the first tear in a bond that had lived inside him since his first shift beneath the winter moon. Ilyra Voss saw it too, and smiled. "Witness," she cried, pointing toward Vera. "The border woman has drawn the royal wolf from his king. This is not witness law. This is crown theft." The noble rings seized on the phrase, crown theft. It spread quickly because fear preferred a crime it could name. If Vera had stolen the wolf, then Maddren's confession did not need to be justice. It could be enchantment. If the missing pack verse had influenced the beast, then the court did not need to restore the erased. It could punish the woman standing nearest the miracle. Vera felt the shift and hated how familiar it was. Truth had stood in the open for less than a breath before power searched for a way to make it criminal. Maddren took one step toward his wolf. The beast lowered its head. Not a threat. A refusal. The movement broke something across Maddren's face. He stopped at once, though every part of him looked pulled toward the creature. Ilyra's voice sharpened. "Majesty, if you cannot command your own wolf, the council must intervene before the Eastern Pax declare the crown compromised." Several council lords rose. The Eastern envoys watched without moving, their amber eyes bright under fur collars. They did not need to speak. Their silence already weighed like spears. Vera looked at the royal wolf. The beast had not chosen her as queen. She knew that though the court did not, it stood near her because the truth had been tied to her pain, because the missing verse still held the breath it had once begged from death. If she let the court call that devotion romance, fate, or theft, Ilyra would win a cleaner lie. So Vera stepped away from the wolf. The beast followed. She stopped and turned to it, placing one hand in the air between them without touching its muzzle. "No," she whispered. The royal wolf stilled. The amphitheater went quiet again, but this silence was different. Listening silence. Vera lifted her voice. "I will not take what the crown failed to keep." Maddren looked at her. So did every noble who had expected her to clutch at sudden power. Vera faced the court. "The wolf is not mine. The verse is not mine alone. The witness names are not mine to use as a throne. If the royal wolf turns from his king, it is not because I called him. It is because the pack song still carries a cost the crown has not repaid." Ilyra's lips thinned. Pretty words from a woman standing behind a royal beast. Vera moved farther from the wolf. This time it did not follow. It remained between Vera and Maddren, trembling with effort, as if some law older than affection had held it in place. Maddren's eyes lowered to the glowing command still burning in the air. If the king remembers and still refuses restoration, his wolf shall forget him first. He understood before anyone explained it. Vera saw it happen. The wolf had not abandoned him because of her. It was waiting. Maddren turned to the lower rings where the witness names shone under worn boots and widow hems. His voice carried without crown polish now. Restoration begins tonight. The word struck the amphitheater like a bell. Ilyra moved instantly. No king can alter the pack song during active renewal without archive countersignature. Then the archive will witness the alteration. The archive refuses. The archive is under investigation. A shock passed through the upper rings. No Alpha King had ever spoken those words during renewal. The song archive was supposed to be above politics, above blood debts, above personal grief. That was why its corruption had been so useful. Maddren held out his hand toward the fallen moon archive knife. It shook where it lay near the lower witness line, then slid across the stone into his palm. The black ink along its underside writhed, resisting him. He turned to Vera. "I do not ask you to forgive me." "Good," she said, "because I have not." A few nobles bristled, but Maddren only nodded once. "Tell me the first restoration." Vera's throat tightened. This was the place where a weaker story would have made him choose her and call it justice. But Vera could feel every name beneath the stone. Her own was only the one the moon had used to break the silence open. She looked to the widow whose husband's name glowed near her feet. "Start with the dead who carried the fever fires," Vera said. Their names were removed because they had no houses powerful enough to object. Maddren turned to the royal scribes. "Write them." No one moved. The chief scribe, an elderly man in a wolf-gray robe, swallowed. "Majesty, we do not have the sanctioned list." Vera lowered her hand to the stone. "The song does." She sang one note. Not as hard as before. Not enough to open the whole missing verse. Just enough to wake the names nearest the lower ring. Silver letters brightened one by one. Myra of the South Watch. Old Wren Fire Carrier. Salin Widow of the Third Patrol. Brythe Wound Washer. Taven Mar voice returned. The scribes stared. Maddren's voice cut through their hesitation. "Write them as witness record." Quills moved. The first scratch of ink sounded small, then enormous. A widow began to cry, not with weakness, but with the shock of hearing the world make room for the dead she had been told to mourn quietly. Taven Mar stood straighter as his name entered royal record for the first time, not as a patrol number but as a living witness. The royal wolf took one step toward Maddren. Only one. But the entire court saw it. Maddren did too. Ilyra's face hardened. She could not allow the second step. "Restoration by unsanctioned song is treason against the archive," she declared. Under First-Keeper law, when royal memory is compromised by hostile cadence, the Song-Keeper may ring the silence bell. The lower rings recoiled. Vera felt the name before she understood it. Silence bell. Her mother had spoken of it only once, in a voice so flat it had frightened Vera as a child. Not a weapon for killing bodies. Worse. A bell made to close living throats around forbidden witness, leaving survivors unable to speak the truth even to themselves. Maddren's expression darkened. That law was sealed after the old purges. Ilyra smiled. Sealed laws may be reopened by archive necessity. She raised her empty hand. One of the white-robed singers flinched, then reached beneath the singer's dais and pulled a chain Vera had not noticed before. It was thin black and threaded through the hidden stone like a vein. "No," Vera said. Too late. Far below the amphitheater, something vast and hollow woke. The first bell note rose from under the central stone. It had no music in it. Only absence. Every glowing witness name flickered. The widow's cry cut off mid-breath. Taven clutched his throat. The rough border cadence died across the lower rings as if invisible hands had closed around every voice that had dared remember. Vera's own throat tightened. The missing pack verse inside her chest slammed against the silence and found no way out. The royal wolf roared, but even its sound broke apart before it reached the moon. Ilyra descended one step triumphant at last. "Let us see what remains of witness when no one can sing." Maddren raised the moon archive knife, but the black chain beneath the dais tightened around his wrist before he could strike. The silence bell rang again. This time the silver name above the amphitheater began to fade. Vera Lowen thinned in the moonlight. Vera dropped to one knee, both hands at her throat, fighting for a sound that would not come. Then, from the parchment clutched against her chest, her mother's final verse opened, one hidden line in blood-red light. When all voices are sealed, the cost must be spoken by the one who ordered silence. The words burned toward Maddren, and the silence bell rang a third time. The third note of the silence bell did not fade. It stayed in the bones. Vera knelt on the central stone with both hands at her throat, feeling the sealed note tighten around every breath she tried to shape. Around her, the lower ring witnesses stood frozen in terror. Mouths opened. No names came out. Widows clutched glowing stones that had already begun to dim. Tavin Mar bent over, as if struck through the chest, his restored name flickering beneath his boots. The amphitheater had become a place full of open mouths and stolen sound. Above it all, the blood-red line on Lena Lowen's parchment burned brighter. When all voices are sealed, the cost must be spoken by the one who ordered silence. The words pointed toward Maddren like an accusation made of fire. Ilyra Voss saw them and smiled with desperate brilliance. Then speak, Majesty. Tell them the cost. Tell them one border woman mattered more than the stability of every pack beneath your crown. Maddren stood with the black chain coiled around his wrist, the moon archive knife locked in his hand by old bell magic. His throat was not sealed like the others. Vera could see that now. The silence bell had spared his voice, because the law wanted something from him. Not command, not denial. Confession. But confession alone could destroy a king, if the court was hungry enough to use it. Ilyra knew that. The eastern packs are listening, she said, turning toward the upper rings. The council is listening. If our Alpha King gives sovereign fault into the pack song, every rival house may claim the Kael oath broken. This is why I contained the verse. This is why I removed the witnesses. Not for myself. For the throne. A few nobles seized on her words. Vera saw them leaning toward relief again, toward the familiar comfort of calling cruelty necessary. The witness names dimmed another shade. Maddren looked at Vera. She could not speak. That did not mean she had no answer. With shaking fingers, she pulled Lena Lowen's parchment from her chest and pressed it flat against the stone between them. Then she took the broken gray cloth that had bound her wrists and laid it beside the royal order bearing Maddren's seal. Two proofs, one of what had been paid, one of what had been done. Then she looked at him until he understood. Do not speak about me. Speak about the cost. Maddren's eyes changed. The court had expected her to beg him with silence. Ilyra had expected her to need him. Instead, Vera had given him the only path that did not turn her wound into his redemption. She had not offered forgiveness. She had offered record. The royal wolf, trapped in a broken growl beside him, dragged one paw across the stone toward the fading name above the amphitheater. Vera Lowen trembled in thinning light. Maddren lifted the moon archive knife. The black chain tightened until blood showed at his wrist. He did not pull away. I ordered silence, he said. The words struck the amphitheater with terrible force. The silence bell shuddered. Ilyra's smile vanished. Maddren spoke again, louder. I ordered a woman removed from royal hearing because I feared the weakness her truth would reveal. I allowed the archive to call paid pain unstable. I let the court honor a clean song while the border carried the wound. The black chain bit deeper. Blood slid down his hand and touched the knife hilt. The blade flared. The witness names steadied. Ilyra stepped forward, voice sharp. Majesty, you are under hostile cadence. The crown shield. The crown shield was used to gag my confession, Maddren said. The silence bell was used to gag theirs. Do not name your weapon's protection again. The bell note wavered. A widow sucked in a sudden breath. Not speech yet. Breath. Vera felt the seal at her throat loosen by the width of a thread. Pain rushed behind it, waiting to become sound, but she held it. This was Maddren's cost to name. If she sang too soon, the court would say she had pulled his words from him. Maddren turned to the upper rings. You ask what one border woman cost the throne, he said. I will answer. She cost the throne its lie. The royal wolf lifted its head. Maddren's voice roughened but did not break. The cost was not Vera Lowen alone. It was every widow told grief did not qualify as witness. Every fire carrier whose hands warmed stones no noble touched. Every scout whose wolf lived because someone sang through blood while the archive waited to see who would survive. The lower rings began to breathe as one. The names brightened. Ilyra's control snapped. Enough. She grabbed the black chain leading beneath the dais and pulled with both hands. The silence bell rang again. This note was deeper, older. It struck not the throat but memory. Vera's vision blurred. Around her, people swayed. Several witnesses stared at the glowing names beneath them as if suddenly unsure why those names mattered. The bell was not only silencing them now, it was loosening memory from feeling. Tavin Mar whispered without sound, confused, one hand pressed to his own name. Vera's scar burned so violently she nearly collapsed. Maddren saw it. He moved toward her, but the royal wolf barred him with its body. Not in rejection this time. In warning. The cost was not complete. Maddren understood. His face hardened with grief. I ordered Vera Lowen removed before I remembered her voice, he said. So let the pack song hear what I remember now. The knife in his hand turned of its own accord. Its point faced his chest. A cry tried to rise from the court, but the bell swallowed it. Vera's eyes widened. She shook her head once sharply. No. She had not asked for death. She would not let his sacrifice become another grand royal gesture that buried the names again beneath one dramatic wound. Maddren saw her refusal and stopped the blade before it pierced flesh. Then slowly he turned the knife away from his heart and placed its point against the black silver seal on the removal order. Better. Vera held his gaze. Maddren cut through his own seal. The effect was instant. The silence bell cracked. Far below, the amphitheater metal screamed. The black chain around Maddren's wrist split open link by link, each breaking with a burst of dark sparks. The sealed throats of the lower rings opened at once in ragged gasps. Vera's voice returned as pain. She did not sing yet. She breathed through it. The removal order curled at the edges, but did not burn away. Instead, Maddren pressed his bloodied hand over the severed seal and spoke into the cut. By my hand, this order is named false in judgment, lawful only in cowardice and void before witness. The moonlight above the amphitheater exploded silver. Witness names surged up every ring. Not only the lower stones now. The names climbed the noble tiers shining beneath embroidered robes and polished boots, forcing the highborn to see the erased beneath the places they had stood. Mira of the South Watch. Old Wren Fire Carrier. Salin Widow of the 3rd Patrol. Brythe Wound Washer. Lena Lowen Cadence Keeper. Dozens more followed. Then, hundreds. The royal singers fell back from the light. Some wept. Some covered their mouths. One young singer tore the silver note thread from his sleeve and threw it onto the ground. Ilyra stumbled as the witness lines reached the dais. The moon archive knife wrenched itself from Maddren's hand and flew back to the central stone where it struck point first into the carved moon. Black ink poured from the blade like smoke. Inside the smoke, a memory formed. Not the fever tent. A chamber beneath the archive. Ilyra stood there in Song-Keeper, white, younger, but already cold before rows of folded song leaves. At her side stood 3 council lords and the chief royal scribe. Before them, border records lay open. A council lord's voice emerged through the smoke. If the Lowen cadence enters the pack song, the border houses will gain witness right. Widows will claim pension. Servants will claim oath debt. The war accounts will reopen. Ilyra's answer came clear and calm. Then we do not merely remove Vera Lowen. We remove the category that allows her to exist. The memory turned. Her hand crossed out a heading at the top of a witness roll. Border keepers. Then she wrote a replacement term. UN-sanctioned camp labor. The smoke vanished. For one heartbeat, no one moved. Then the lower rings erupted, not in chaos but in sound. Not polished song. Not noble anthem. A broken, furious wave of names spoken by people who had finally remembered what had been stolen. Ilyra backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The sealed gates held. The moon watched. Maddren turned toward the chief royal scribe, whose face had gone gray. You were there, he said. The scribe dropped his quill. Ilyra lifted one trembling hand toward the upper arch. If I fall, half this court falls with me. Vera finally stood. The missing pack verse stirred around her like a living thing, but she did not release it. Not yet. Then half the court should learn how falling feels, she said. The royal wolf stepped toward Maddren. This time it did not turn away. It lowered its head and touched its muzzle to the blood on his wrist. The bond was not healed, but it had remembered the path back. Then the amphitheater stones beneath Ilyra's feet split with silver light, and one final hidden record rose between her and the moon. Song-Keeper Ilyra Voss claimed honor for the South Fever verse. Below it, a second line began to form. Honor claim paid by. The light stopped. The missing name waited for Vera's voice. The unfinished line waited in the moonlight. Honor claim paid by every eye in Kael Moon Amphitheater turned to Vera. For the first time that night, the court wanted her voice. Not to bind it. Not to cut it. Not to dismiss it as border superstition. They wanted it because the pack song had stopped at the edge of truth and refused to move without the woman they had erased. Vera felt the danger of that hunger. A court that had silenced her could just as quickly use her. It could take one name from her mouth, punish one villain, polish one apology, and call the wound closed before the deeper rot reached noble stone. Ilyra Voss saw the same danger and wrapped herself in it. Say it then, she whispered. Her face was pale, but her eyes had sharpened again. If you want your little victory, claim it. Let the court hear you accuse me of stealing from Vera Lowen. Vera looked at the glowing line. Paid by. One empty space. One waiting name. It would be so easy. Her own name had been cut. Her own pain had been used. Her own voice had been nearly bound. If she spoke only for herself, the court might allow it. They might even applaud. A single wrong could be corrected without changing the kingdom. But beneath Vera's feet, hundreds of witness names glowed in the stone. Her mother's parchment pulsed against her palm. The royal wolf watched her with moon-bright eyes, silent now, as if it understood that the next note would decide whether the night became justice or merely another song about a king's regret. Vera lifted her head. No. The word confused the court more than any accusation. Ilyra blinked. No. Vera turned toward Maddren. If I name only myself, what happens to the rest? Maddren did not answer quickly. That was answer enough. A council lord found his courage. The current matter concerns the disputed South Fever verse. Wider record claims must be reviewed after renewal by proper authority. A bitter smile touched Vera's mouth. After renewal. After the song closes. After the witnesses leave. After the court decides which dead are convenient. The lower rings went still. Maddren looked at the council lord. Sit down. The man sat. Vera stepped closer to the silver record rising from the stone. The unfinished honor claim burned brighter as she approached. Ilyra wants me to say my own name because one stolen honor can be repaid privately, Vera said. But the verse did not save one wolf. The fever did not take one house. The border did not stand because one woman suffered beautifully enough for nobles to pity her. The royal wolf gave a low sound. Vera looked toward the lower rings. Sing the beginning again. The old widow started first. Her voice shook but did not break. Tavin joined her. Then the one-handed fire carrier. Then scouts, servants, wound washers, ash sweepers, widows, and old patrol cooks who had never stood inside the official anthem. Their cadence rose rough and uneven, but the amphitheater took it whole. The silver line above Ilyra changed. Honor claim paid by. The empty space split open. Vera Lowen. Then another name formed beneath it. Lena Lowen. Then another. Mira of the South Watch. Old Wren fire carrier. Salin widow of the 3rd Patrol. Brythe wound washer. Taven Mar voice returned. The names came faster, not as a list carved by clerks. As breath returning to the room. Each name rose with a faint echo of what had been paid. A woman carrying fever water through snow. An old man holding blue flame against a ward stone until his hands blistered. A widow binding wolf throats, so they would not bite through their tongues. A boy waking after 3 days, unable to speak until the cadence found him. The honor claim stretched across the central air, until Ilyra Voss stood beneath a canopy of stolen names. Her white gown no longer looked pure. It looked surrounded. "No," she said. "No. Those are not sanctioned contributors. They are camp labor. Emergency support. Unranked bodies in a fever event." Vera turned on her. "You hear yourself, don't you?" Ilyra's mouth closed. Maddren's voice followed, low and lethal. "Royal scribes." Every scribe in the amphitheater bent over fresh parchment. "Record each name under witness right," Maddren said. "No reductions. No servant category. No camp labor." The chief scribe's hand trembled. "Majesty, if witness right is granted, pensions, land debts, and oath compensation may reopen across 3 border seasons." "Then reopen them." The words hit the upper rings like a thrown torch. Nobles surged to their feet. Council lords protested. Eastern envoys exchanged sharp looks. This was no longer about an erased woman. This was coinland rank old debts, winter graves in every comfortable house built on the silence of those who had kept the borders alive. Ilyra used the uproar. She darted toward the singer's dais, one hand reaching for the silver bells braided in her hair. Vera saw too late that they were not ornaments. Each tiny bell was etched with a note mark. Ilyra ripped the braid loose. The bells scattered across the stone. Royal singers screamed as the bells struck the witness lines. Wherever they landed, a name flickered out. "False names cannot hold under first song trial," Ilyra cried. "Let the wolves choose what memory lives." The bells rang by themselves. A high, cruel music cut across the lower cadence. Witness names guttered. Several wolves backed away, confused by the competing sound. The royal wolf snarled, but the bell notes twisted around its growl and turned it thin. Vera understood the trick. Ilyra could not erase all the names now. But she could make the court believe the song had become unstable. If enough names flickered, if enough wolves faltered, the council would demand containment. Vera reached for the nearest bell. Maddren caught her wrist before her fingers touched it. She froze. So did he. His grip loosened at once. "Not to stop you," he said, voice rough. "To warn you. Those bells are cut with throat silver." Vera looked down. The bell nearest her glowed at the rim, sharp as poison. Ilyra smiled through the chaos. Let her prove her witness. Let her bleed for every name she wants restored. Maddren's eyes went cold. "Ilyra, no," Vera said. He stopped. She looked at the scattered bells, then at the lower rings where names flickered under frightened feet. The song had never promised painless truth. Her mother's law had been clear from the first hidden stare. Buried song opens only to the cost that made it. But Vera was tired of cost being demanded only from the already wounded. She turned to the royal singers. "You trained under her," she said. "You wore her note thread. You sang her clean version while we were named unstable. If you believe the pack song belongs only to sanctions, stand still." The singers stared at her. "If you believe it belongs to witness," Vera said, "pick up the bells." No one moved. Ilyra laughed, once bright with relief. Then the young singer who had torn silver thread from his sleeve in part 7 stepped forward. He knelt and picked up a throat silver bell. His palm burned instantly. He cried out but held it. Another singer followed. Then an older woman from the back row. Then 4 more. One by one, royal singers knelt among the witness lines and gathered Ilyra's bells into their bleeding hands. Not enough to redeem years of silence. Enough to break her music. The false ringing died. The lower cadence surged. Vera sang with them. This time the missing pack verse opened wider. Silver light poured from Lena's parchment and wrapped around the royal singer's burned hands, not healing them, but marking them as witnesses to their own complicity. The honor claim above Ilyra blazed complete. Song-Keeper Ilyra Voss claimed honor for the South Fever verse. Honor claim paid by Vera Lowen, Lena Lowen, and the South Border witnesses. The white wolf silk on Ilyra's gown began to darken, not burn, rewrite. Every silver note stitched into her dress twisted backward, forming the name she had taken. Her bells, gathered in bleeding singer hands, rang once more, not with silence but with confession. Ilyra staggered. Her official Song-Keeper collar cracked. A gasp rose from the upper rings as the collar fell from her throat and struck the stone. The pack song had stripped her title. Maddren stepped forward. Ilyra Voss, by witness of Moonwolf and record. You are removed as Song-Keeper pending judgment for erasure of royal memory. The court broke into chaos. But Vera heard something beneath it. A low strain inside Lena's parchment. The missing pack verse was not finished. The restored names blazed in the amphitheater, but the border blessing above them still had a hollow center. The Renewal Anthem had not completed. The moon had climbed higher, cold and full, almost touching crown height. Vera looked down at the parchment. A final line emerged. The verse may restore the border. Only if the living bearer sings the ending without keeping her own voice back. Her blood went cold. Maddren saw her face change. What is it? Vera folded the parchment once, but the words burned through. Ilyra, kneeling beside her shattered collar, began to laugh. Softly. Then harder. You wanted every name restored, she whispered. Now pay like a Lowen. The royal wolf turned toward Vera with a sound of fear. And for the first time that night, the Alpha King looked afraid, not of losing his throne, but of losing her. The moon reached crown height. Its light struck the antlered crown carved above Maddren's empty throne and poured down through Kael Moon Amphitheater in a single white column. Every restored name in the stone flared beneath it. Every wolf lifted its head. The Renewal Anthem, unfinished and wounded, waited in the air like a blade held above the kingdom. Vera stood at the center of it with Lena Lowen's parchment burning through her fingers. The verse may restore. The border only. If the living bearer sings, the ending without keeping her own voice back. The court understood enough to go silent. Not out of respect. Out of hunger. They had watched her name return. They had watched Ilyra stripped. They had watched the erased rise under their feet. Now, they wanted the border saved. The ceremony completed. The wolves quieted the moon, satisfied. They wanted the woman they had nearly bound to spend the last of herself, so the night would stop accusing them. Vera felt it all. Their fear. Their hope. Their old habit of taking. Maddren stepped toward her. No. A single word rougher than command. Vera looked at him. For the first time, his face held no throne distance at all. Only fear. Not fear of rival packs. Not fear of shame. Fear of the cost written in her hands. Ilyra laughed from beside her broken collar. Listen to him. The king who signed your erasure now wishes to keep you whole. How touching. How late. The royal wolf growled, but Ilyra's smile only widened. She was ruined yet not powerless. Ruined people with secrets could still strike deeper than those standing clean. Vera folded the parchment once, though the final line burned through it. If I do not sing, she said, the border blessing fails. Maddren's jaw tightened. Then the crown will bear the failure. The border will bear it first. That silenced him. They both knew what failure meant. Fever in the wardstones. Rival packs crossing weak passes. Patrol wolves losing their voices before winter. The people in the lower rings would suffer before any noble house felt hunger. Vera looked at the witness names shining around her. Her mother had taught her that a true song remembered the cost. But remembering cost was not the same as demanding the same women pay forever. She turned toward the court. If I sing the ending, I will not do it as a sacrifice offered to make this court comfortable. The lower rings stilled. Vera lifted Lena's parchment. The pack song will not close over my voice the way it closed over my mother's. Every restored name remains in record before I sing. Every debt owed to the border witnesses is opened before I sing. And the crown will swear that no Song-Keeper Council, Lord Alpha or King, may remove a paid witness again because the truth is inconvenient. A council lord rose. Impossible. Such an oath would bind future sovereign authority. Maddren turned toward him. It should. The lord sat as if struck. Maddren stepped into the moon column beside Vera, but not in front of her. Royal scribes. Write the oath. The scribes obeyed this time without hesitation. Ilyra's face twisted. Ink will not save her voice. No, Vera said. But it will stop you from profiting from its loss. The words landed cleanly. For the first time, Ilyra had no answer. The scribes wrote. The oath entered parchment. Maddren took the finished page and cut his palm with the moon archive knife, now cleared of black ink, but still hungry with witness. Blood welled dark against moonlight. He pressed his hand to the oath. I, Maddren Kael, Alpha, King of the Moon Crown. Bind the crown to witness right. No paid name may be removed from Paksong border record, widow roll debt ledger, or royal memory by rank, shame, political convenience, or archive seal. The amphitheater trembled. The oath rose in silver above him. Then he turned to Vera, voice lower. I cannot undo what I allowed. I can stand where the cost reaches. Vera held his gaze. You do not get to become noble because you finally bleed near the wound. Pain crossed his face. I know. That answer mattered more than any vow of devotion could have. Vera nodded once. Then she began to sing. The first note came from her scar. Not her throat. Not her mouth. From the place beneath her ribs where the South Fever Night had lived for 2 winters without permission. It rose raw and low, carrying smoke, snow, blood, wolf breath, and every hand the archive had renamed labor. The lower rings answered, not loudly, carefully. They held the beginning while Vera reached for the ending. The missing pack verse opened. Silver music unfurled from Lena's parchment and circled Vera like a living ribbon. It touched the restored names in the stone. Each name answered with a brief flare of memory. The amphitheater filled with glimpses. Mira carrying fever water. Old Ren holding blue flame in burned hands. Salen tying a wolf's jaw through convulsions. Tavin waking with his voice returned. Lena Lowen standing between Ilyra and the correction order. Then the verse reached Maddren. His royal wolf howled. This time the howl did not beg. It joined. Maddren dropped to one knee under the force of it, his bloodied palm still pressed to the crown oath. Through the wolf's voice, the court heard the fever night as truth, the beast dying. Vera singing Ilyra, taking the seal ring Maddren, waking weak enough to choose fear when truth demanded courage. The upper rings bowed their heads, some in shame, some because the song gave them no other posture. Vera sang higher. The border blessing began to mend. Above the amphitheater, lines of silver light stretched outward toward the mountains. Far beyond the stone walls, distant wolves answered from watchtowers and ridge paths. Wardstones woke in the dark. The south border hollow for 2 winters inhaled. Then Ilyra moved. No one saw her until she was already behind the central dais, one hand wrapped around the last throat silver bell hidden inside her sleeve. Her own palm was bleeding where the bell had bitten her, but she smiled through the pain. You still do not understand, she whispered. A Lowen voice can restore the border. It can also be buried inside it. She crushed the bell. A shriek of silver tore across the verse. Vera's voice broke. The restored names flickered. Maddren surged to his feet, but the shattered bell released a ring of throat silver around Vera, not him. It tightened like a halo of knives. Ilyra shouted over the chaos. If she finishes the song, takes her voice forever. If she stops, the border fails. Let the court remember its heroine properly silent. Maddren lunged toward Ilyra. The royal wolf was faster. It struck her down beside the broken collar, one massive paw pinning her sleeve to the stone. It did not kill her. That would have been too merciful for a woman whose crimes lived in records. It held her there while her shattered bell continued to cut the air. Vera could not breathe. The ending waited one note away. Maddren reached for the throat silver ring and pain tore through his hand. Blood ran down his wrist. He tried again. Vera shook her head. If he broke it by force, the verse would tear with it. Her mother's law had always been exact. Cost could be shared but not stolen. A voice could be given but not taken. The ending had to come from her because she was the living bearer. Vera looked at Maddren. His eyes were wild now, stripped of crown command and all royal distance. Do not, he said. It was not an order. It was a plea. Vera's heart answered, and that frightened her more than the silver at her throat. She touched Lena's parchment to his blood-marked oath, joining Mother's verse to King's vow. Then she turned toward the lower rings. Not toward the nobles. Not toward Ilyra. Toward the witnesses. She sang the final note. The sound left her body like a star being pulled through bone. The amphitheater exploded with light. Every restored name burned bright enough to cast shadows. The renewal anthem completed. Not polished, not clean, but whole. The silver lines shot outward into the mountains, sealing the border with witness instead of silence. Wolves howled from every ring, every tower, every unseen ridge beyond the amphitheater. The throat silver ring shattered. Ilyra screamed, as every stolen note in her body rang back against her. Maddren caught Vera before she fell. This time she did not have the strength to stop him. The moonlight faded slowly from her hair, her hands, her lips. Lena's parchment, now blank, settled against the crown oath. Maddren held Vera carefully, as if the wrong pressure might break the last remaining music inside her. "Vera," he said. Her eyes opened. She looked at him. She tried to answer. No sound came. The completed pack song trembled overhead in victory, and Vera Lowen's voice was gone. For a moment after Vera's voice vanished, Kael Moon Amphitheater did not know whether to mourn or cheer. The border blessing had completed. Every ward stone beyond the mountains answered in silver fire. Wolves howled from ridges no eye could see. The Renewal Anthem hung whole above the amphitheater for the first time in 2 winters, no longer polished, no longer clean, no longer starving on hidden cost. And in the center of the moonlit stone, Vera Lowen lay silent in the Alpha King's arms. Maddren did not call for celebration. He did not lift the restored anthem like a victory. He looked down at Vera's parted lips, at the breath moving through her, at the terrible absence where her voice should have been, and something in him went colder than rage. "Healers," he said. The royal healers rushed from the upper ring, but the royal wolf barred their path until Vera's eyes opened again. She looked at the beast first. Its great head lowered beside her hand, its ears back, its silver-black body trembling with a grief. No court could mistake for enchantment now. Then she looked at Maddren. He did not say her name again. Perhaps he feared asking for a voice she no longer had. Vera moved her fingers once toward the stone. Maddren understood. He set her down carefully, not on the royal cloak a guard tried to offer, but on the central witness ground, where her mother's parchment and his blood-marked oath lay side by side. Ilyra laughed from beneath the royal wolf's paw. It was a small laugh, cracked but still cruel. "There," she whispered. "A perfect ending. The border has its blessing. The court has its heroine. And the heroine has finally learned the shape all useful women must take." Her eyes slid to Vera, silent. The lower rings made a furious sound, but no one moved before Vera did. She pushed herself upright. Maddren reached to help her, then stopped before touching. The pause mattered. Vera saw it through the haze of exhaustion and old pain. He had learned at last that protection without permission was another form of taking. She accepted his offered hand only long enough to stand. Then she let go. The amphitheater watched her sway beneath the completed pack song. Her throat was bare, her face pale. No sound came when she tried to draw breath into words. Ilyra smiled wider. Vera looked at the royal scribes. Then she pointed to the restored names blazing in the stone. The chief scribe blinked confused until Tavan Mar stepped from the lower ring. "She wants them written," he said, voice rough but clear. "All of them, not after judgment." Now, the old widow beside him lifted her chin. "Before anyone calls her silence enough." Maddren turned to the scribes. "Right." Quills struck parchment. This time they did not wait for noble permission. The scribes moved down from their polished benches and knelt among the lower witness lines. They wrote from the stone itself: widows, scouts, fire carriers, wound washers, patrol cooks, fever binders, cadence keepers, unnamed hands. The archive had converted into labor. With every name entered into royal record, a silver note lifted from the floor and joined the pack song overhead. Vera stood through it. No throne, no cloak, no crown. Only the ash-gray woman who had refused to let one stolen honor close over 100 unpaid graves. Maddren stood 1 pace behind her. Not beside. Not before. Behind. The court noticed. So did Vera. One by one, the restored names reached the upper tiers. Noble houses shifted uneasily as old debts appeared beneath their own family banners. Land grants promised to dead patrols. Widow right withheld. Fire pay diverted. Oath compensation marked complete by men who had never walked the fever ridges. The pack song did not shout their crimes, it simply remembered. That was worse. When the last visible name entered royal record, the moonlight gathered above Vera. It did not return to her throat. Not yet. Instead, it descended toward Ilyra. The royal wolf lifted its paw and stepped back. Ilyra tried to rise, but the name stitched into her darkened gown tightened like living thread. The white wolf silk that had once proclaimed her purity now bore every witness she had erased. Maddren faced her before the whole court. Ilyra Voss. He said, you are stripped of Song-Keeper title, archive authority, ceremonial rank, and all honor claimed from the South Fever verse. You will stand trial before the restored witnesses, not behind archive doors. Ilyra's mouth twisted. If I am tried, council lords will fall with me. Maddren's eyes moved to the upper rings. Then they should prepare to fall standing. The Eastern envoys, silent until then, lowered their heads not in submission but in acknowledgement. They had come to witness weakness. Instead, they had seen a king bleed his own seal open before the moon, and a border woman force a kingdom to remember what it owed. Ilyra looked past Maddren to Vera. You think this restores you? They will make statues. They will sing your suffering. They will love you best now that you cannot answer. Vera's gaze did not waver. She stepped to the blood-marked crown oath and took the moon archive knife from the stone. Maddren tensed but did not stop her. The knife lay cold in her hand. Its edge had cut memory from song names from record and truth from ceremony. Vera turned it once, then dragged its tip across the blank back of Vera Lowen's parchment. No ink touched it. Only moonlight. Slowly words appeared where the blade passed. No. Honer without voice. The amphitheater read them in silence. Vera cut a second line beneath the first. No song complete while the singer is buried. The pack song overhead trembled. The royal wolf lifted its head. Maddren stepped forward, then stopped again, waiting. Vera looked at him and pointed to the crown oath. He understood. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of a man who finally knew command could not repair what command had broken. By crown oath and witness right, Vera Lowen's voice is not tribute, not payment, not border property, not royal debt, and not ceremonial sacrifice. What was given to save the border must be returned to the woman who bore it. The moon did not answer. Not enough. Vera looked to the lower rings. Tavin understood first. Vera Lowen, he said. The old widow followed. Vera Lowen, then the fire carrier, the wound washer, the singers with burned hands, the royal scribes kneeling in ink and moonlight. One by one, the restored witnesses spoke her name, not as pity, not as worship, but as record. The wolves joined last. Their howls rose gently at first, carrying no command, no hunger, no demand. Only return. The royal wolf stepped close to Vera and bowed its great head until its muzzle nearly touched the scar beneath her ribs. Maddren did not move. This was not his gift to give. The pack song lowered around Vera like silver rain. She felt it enter not through her throat but through every place that had carried silence, her scar, her wrists, her ribs, the hollow behind her tongue where words had vanished. It hurt less than she expected. Or perhaps she had become too familiar with pain to fear its honest form. A single note returned to her, then breath, then sound. Vera closed her eyes. When she opened them, the court leaned toward her, waiting for gratitude, accusation, blessing, anything they could use to understand the woman they had nearly turned into a monument. She gave them one word. No, it was hoarse. Broken. Alive. A shock passed through the amphitheater. Vera touched her throat, and this time tears did come. Not for the court, not for Maddren, not even for victory, but because her voice had returned to her body instead of remaining inside their song. Maddren's face changed in a way no throne could hide. Relief. Then restraint. He bowed his head to her. Not as king to subject, not as man to mate, as the one who had signed the wound to the one who had refused to let it become the end of her. I owe you more than apology, he said. Vera's voice scraped but held. Yes. A faint, stunned laugh moved through the lower rings. Not mockery. Release. Maddren almost smiled, but grief stopped it. Tell me where to begin. Vera looked across Kael Moon Amphitheater. The restored names, the humbled singers, the exposed nobles. The scribes still writing Ilyra bound in the record she had tried to bury. And the royal wolf standing no longer between king and witness, but beside the truth they both had to serve. Begin, Vera said, by never making a woman sing alone for what a kingdom owes. The words entered the pack song. Not as punishment, as law. The moonlight sealed them above the amphitheater, where every renewal to come would have to pass through that line before any crown victory or noble house could be praised. Maddren turned to the court. "Let it be written first." The scribes wrote. The royal wolf stepped back to Maddren at last and pressed its shoulder against his leg. Maddren closed his eyes for one brief second, but when he opened them, he did not reach for Vera. He waited. Vera picked up her mother's parchment. Lena Lowen's name shone on it now, not buried, not claimed by Ilyra, not softened into a servant's footnote. Cadence keeper. Final witness. Mother. Vera folded the parchment and held it against her heart. When she walked from the central stone, Maddren walked one pace behind her exactly as he had stood close enough to guard far enough not to claim. At the lowest ring, the widows stepped aside. Tavin bowed his head. The singers with burned hands lowered their note threads to the ground. Above them, the restored pack song continued into the mountains, carrying every name the court had tried to forget. At the amphitheater gate, Vera paused and looked back once. Ilyra Voss stood beneath the moon, stripped of white silk's lie, surrounded by the names she had stolen. The nobles could not look away. The king could not look away. No one could. That was enough for tonight. Vera stepped through the gate first. Behind her, the Alpha King followed. Not to lead her. To begin repaying the song.